ultimately, in terms of however you need to get it done, it's always going to be horses for courses. It's always going to be the right route, the right channel for that piece of work and the circumstances and the setup of the organization and where they are on the maturity curve and what their internal capabilities are. Because, in some cases, if you're triaging it and you're looking after everything from an overall workforce planning perspective, it might be, well, actually, that's 3 hires, or because that's definitely going to be fully in scope for the next 5 years within this part of the business. And which leads me on to my next question, which is, who the hell owns it? And I think it's a difficult question to answer, I think, but I'd just be interested in your perspectives on this, because this is something that's the scope of what an MSP can help with, and the solution the problem it can solve has got broader, and in my opinion, much more logical, in the sense that it encompasses now at the best level, what's the piece of work, what are all your options, this is the most effective way to get it done, let's get it done, let's measure it, let's make sure we're getting the best value from whatever route that is, perm hire, contractor, statement of work, freelancer, whatever. But within organizations, a lot of the time, they're not really set up in that much of a holistic manner, are they? I don't know if you want to go first on that one, Lee, but who owns it, and how are organizations grappling with that issue?
Yeah, so in simple terms, in the old days, which might only be 3 years ago, but in the old days, typically the HR or talent communities owned your permanent solutions and procurement owned your contingent solutions. Now, that wasn't always the case, but it's a bit like you buy an Aussie red and a New Zealand white, right? So rule of thumb would be that's how it used to be. Other key players were the CIO or CTO, whatever, not the head of IT, because big parts of contingent resources were in tech, because that was the nature of that marketplace. So did they own it, or were they key influencers? Is an interesting one. But then as the contingent resource became more consultancy, more statement of work based, which actually was a big part of that was tech, become that CTO has become more influential, potentially a decision maker. The ownership, I don't think I can give you a one size fits all. And it may be that as the market matures, we might get to a relatively consistent owner, but the message probably we would give to our client base right now would be HR and procurement need to be, or HR and talent and procurement, or talent and procurement need to be aligned in order to make sure the categorization and a triage service fits all. I think for one team to own, I think it's a bit much. And there are sometimes the procurement team reporting to the chief of people, and sometimes HR teams reporting to the CPO. So it's a lot easier then. So there isn't really one rule of thumb, but alignment between those 2 or even 3 divisions, I think, are really needed to make it work.
Yeah. What about you, Joe, in terms of that sort of workforce optimization angle? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Lee says. I don't think you can have a single owner for this. I think depending on how mature the client organisation is in actually having a holistic, if you like, people or workforce strategy anyway, I think makes it probably easier for it to sit with HR and procurement to be an enabler, because effectively what you have then is HR owning if you want to call it, the people plan. So, what's the right mix of contingent, perm, project, how big are some of our internal benches, for example, around some of the projects we want to deliver against, what are our internal mobility plans, what are our plans for growing our capacity or capability in different global territories, for example. If you've got a workforce plan, then effectively how you engage with those different routes to market becomes how you deliver against that plan. And then procurement should really be an enabler in terms of putting in place the right deals for you with the right service provider that can actually if you like enable that to happen. I think that's probably quite aspirational for a large number of organizations. There will be pockets of HR and in particular talent management programs that do elements of that very, very well. I think, as Lee's alluded to, historically, kind of probably contingent workers have been kind of an afterthought in that community. It's very much focused first on, it'll be the perm workers, then it will be, potentially, high worth or high value contractors, fixed term contractors, etc. And then you'll start to get into the kind of the more peripheral workforce became an afterthought. But again, I personally think, as you've seen, the nature of work change, even pre-pandemic, in terms of, people were talking about how, the different demographics within the labour market want to actually engage. You don't have jobs for life anymore. You don't even have jobs for 2 or 3 years. You have, independent individual consultants. The HR community was already having to think about how their workforce plans changed in that space to be responsive to the marketplace. So now, pushing forward, it's kind of like, if they embrace it and they can get to that, as I said, what is probably quite an aspirational goal, they will have genuine, business performance enhancing access to talent via different routes.
Yeah, and it's you make a good point, and I think it kind of ties into the data side of the conversation, in the sense that it might not necessarily be a central function that owns it all, but if you can centralize the data, and if you can understand what's happening, where you're getting things done, understand what's driving value for your organization, then that's essential for the decision-making process. And it allows the organization to move away purely from a cost-driven analysis and strategic approach to more of a value-driven one. But I think the data, people are starting to get better at it now. And I think if you look at contingent worker programs, they've been pretty good around data. They're fairly mature in terms of the use of technology and the way that the programs are implemented. Certainly what we see on the services procurement side is it's a much lower level of maturity, and that data kind of needs to catch up, but also that data needs to be centralized. But Lee, from your point of view, that would be the kind of the holy grail, really, wouldn't it? If you're running a program, just have all the data nicely in one place.
Yeah. We have that all the time, Johnny. But it goes back to that traditional thing which Joe said at the beginning there, that visibility and control, isn't it? Data is potentially historical as well, so we've got to look forward. But there are tools out there that enable us now, Johnny, isn't it? So we do have, as I'm sure many have, Power BI. So just in case we had multiple systems feeding into one solution, we can at least have this single point of truth through the aggregated, the view from the multiple. So I think it's actually pretty easier than we imagine, assuming that you have absolutely got all of it from your client and supplier base. Does that evidence is that, obviously, of course, the evidence is what's happened. Trick is in what next and what the future looks like and what we do with it and how to engage. So I'm relatively confident on the data piece, given, as I say, the portals that are available. What will make life easier, I suppose, for everybody, Johnny, is one system that did it all nicely, not just for the supplier side, but also for the hiring manager or buying manager side, to make sure it's just that one click, that kind of single sign on one click. That's probably the not just to engage, but also for them to see the data themselves.